Little more remains from the Hollandia than its name, a name avoided by sailors like an ill omen best left unuttered. The ship vanished without a trace, taking its story and its entire crew with it, soon after beginning its last voyage in 1905. We were working on a documentary about the long-line fishermen of Blacksod Bay when I was taken to the cottage of an old ship's carpenter. His name was J.C. Sullivan. To my surprise, he claimed to know the true story of the Hollandia's fate. He said he could show us pictures. I could hardly believe that the Hollandia's secret had been buried for all those years in some rusty film cans in a village on the Irish coast.
The ship, she's still there in the pictures.
Tell us, please, Mr. Sullivan.
Call me Job. My father must have seen beyond his day. I've returned from the kingdom of death. Like Job, I've been in hell. Now the life's gone out of my hands. 30 years since I've driven a nail into wood. The coals got into them. Sometimes fire, needles. I could tear them off my body. I'm a carpenter. They told me they still use carpenters up north on ships. It was only in the ice they still sailed in wooden ships. Everywhere else was steel, steam. That's why I went to Bergen in Norway, because it's wood I made my living by. I hoped to find an old whaler. That was in 1905. I didn't know where the Hollandia was headed. The Dutchmen knew the northern seas well, and the work was good to do. Everything double-anchored. Decks tarred 3 times over. Took weeks. I had to make little pens up against the rails. Big enough, they said, for a dog to fit in. Everything else was crated up, went between decks. He was with us from the beginning, the picture man. I saw a picture show once in a tent. Didn't see much in it, really. Just a trick show like the shadow shows when I was a kid. My mates laughed at me. You'll be a shadow yourself, too, now, they said. Yes, the picture man never left our side. Not till the very end. One day, it was June, I believe, we were forbidden to leave the ship. And next day, sure enough, we were waked earlier than usual, and the ship was already steaming. I remember how she sailed, real slow out of the fjord, but not really towards the open sea. We barely made the coast before we dropped anchor. A boat came from one of the little islands to meet the ship. We'd hardly believe our own eyes. As though they'd come out of the woodwork everywhere at once. The whole deck was full of them. Dogs. Tough pole dogs from Siberia for pulling sleds. Dogs like that are for travelling overland, you see.
Can you explain that?
I'd sign for a sea voyage. I'm not scared of water or pack ice, but cold feet. The ship put about. We made all sail and steered to southward. With supplies like ours, that meant the South Pole. I saw the crew's looks, but nobody said a word, not even between decks, because there was always one or other of those Dutchmen about. Besides, at sea, it's your hands do the talking. Why wear out your tongue? The captain, no, he was a great skipper. Van Dyke. Van Dyke was his name. He gave us a good life aboard. We didn't make any stops. Sometimes at a little island to water ship, but we never met a living soul. Maybe our journey was set that way. It was the kind of voyage I knew. Do your work and enjoy the entertainment. I like live wood under my hands, better than talking. Some of the fellas like better the talking or the singing or the fooling. Yes, Van Dyke gave us a happy, normal life. The last living place on earth we saw was South Georgia. We steered direct for it. Yes, until we made South Georgia, it was a normal voyage. We weren't allowed ashore. I didn't grieve much for that, though. The harbour there is an open grave. Dead whales everywhere, rotting away. Giant, stinking slaughterhouse. As the scripture says, the Lord taketh away. That evening, the skipper came to our quarters. He was from the sea, a real seaman. Van Dyke. Van Dyke.
What did he say? What did Van Dyke talk about?
I've forgotten. That He knew those seas, that he knew where he was headed, that our task was not an easy one, that the reward would be all the greater. Some hands said that evil stories had been told of a Belgian ship he'd taken into the ice of the South Pole. But Van Dyke was a stranger to evil. I saw it in his eyes. Poor man. If he hadn't been taken from us, everything would have turned out different. Then the very day we left South Georgia, that's where the journey south really began. I've sailed all kinds of seas. I know how they can rage. I can still hear the wood. But this sail south, storm, the winds, the waves, they were God's scourge. From that day on, heaven's rage didn't leave us. My jacket wasn't dry for days. I repaired the wood till the salt blinded my eyes. But even worse than heaven's rage is her silence. Her raving silence. The firmament had opened like a miracle. We sailed into the ice. And she opened up under our bows, broke away crisp-like. The ice lay in great slabs behind us, like shavings behind a plane when it's good and sharp. Never saw ice like that again. Those who made the Psalms might tell you about it. I haven't got the words. The skipper was a master. They don't come any better. When the ice strengthened, we hacked and sawed ourselves a new channel. It was truly the hand of the Almighty guided us through the pack ice that first time. The sea lay clear and open ahead. We sailed straight for the land. I shall never forget it, my first sight of it that night. All hands came on deck. Few living eyes had witnessed these regions. Gigantic floating islands of ice in all directions. Hills, valleys, lowlands, all covered with snow. That night, the land towered high above us. We never did lose sight of it, because the sun at midnight was high above the horizon, as it might be in England on a Christmas day. While we were in those distant regions, so close to the center of our earth, we had no night. I mean dark. Who could have believed that these wonders could have brought us so much evil? Sailors said that these were the unsailed seas of Antarctica. None of us knew the exact shape of our course. When a fix was taken on the sun, we weren't allowed anywhere near. But the skipper knew precisely where he was headed, that's out of all doubt. The Italian started coming on deck every day. The skipper and he barely exchanged a word, but the Italian seemed to have some strange power. A single word from him was enough to change our course. And more than that, the Italian and the Dutchman went out on the ice most every day. They shot sea lions. There are creatures that smart in silence. Sea lions are creatures with a loud pain. Their screaming is awful. Most times they didn't even bring back the meat. Silent pain is louder. That's when it started. The thing that began it all. It was that day the Italian brought down the wrath of the Lord on us. We'd already ridden at anchor for a couple of days. There, the barrier is low enough to go on shore. I had the ill fortune to be on deck. There was always carpentering to do. Cold never stops eating wood, you know. I'll tell you one thing. You may believe me. There are creatures that don't live there. We all knew that. White bears belong to the other end of our earth, to the seas of the North Pole. But the Italian had to have it.
You mean to say that you saw a polar bear in Antarctica? That's impossible.
It's true. By God, it's true. It's in the pictures. I'll forsake my eyes if I haven't seen it, and many others besides me. Of course, we hunted, we shot penguins, seals, sea lions. We had to eat. But no one wanted to be the one to raise his gun to the monster. That creature was a miracle. Italian raised hell with his swearing and shouting, and voice, it cut your ears like a dull chisel. And Ike was in his cabin. Only the Dutchmen followed the Italian, as though possessed. The rest of us, especially the English, began screaming, "Let him be! Let him live!" We knew we'd be punished for this sin. That creature was God sent. It was the longest hunt I have ever witnessed. The creature couldn't die. Truly, it wouldn't die. They slaughtered the creature. The Italian ate the meat raw. The dogs went savage. I didn't want them to eat the meat, but I had no say. What could I say? The bosun, Wilson, spoke to us that night. I understood little of it. I'm not a man of letters. Wilson was that. But he's not here to tell his story, like the others. I'm the only one left.
What did he talk about? Can you remember?
That it was at the South Pole the secret lay. that there was a passage all the way through to the other end of our Earth, the North Pole. That's why the Italian had to have the bear. It was proof of the passage. They say that's what happened to the Belgians. They found it, but the secret was vicious. It had eaten their brains.
Do you believe Wilson's story?
No. I've seen more horrible things.
What do you mean?
In those days, people went that far south only to make charts, not us. It was already February. Time was getting short before we must make for home. The sun had gone back almost to the horizon. We were there to wait. Why? What were we doing there? Whatever it was we were waiting for, it had to show here. That much was clear. We made fast to the barrier with ice anchors. For the first time, we brought supplies ashore. I mean on the ice. I built a little supply hut. Dear wood indeed in that white waste. The dogs were jumpy. They smelled land and snow. I had to go ashore often with my good friends.
You had friends on board?
Yes, Osman, Rex, Violet.
What kind of work did they do?
They pulled the sleds.
You mean your friends with the dogs?
We got on well. The Dutchmen knew too little about dogs, and the Russian couldn't do it all alone. Because they're a pack of wild rascals once they get the snow under their feet. Then they finally showed. It was them we'd been waiting for. 4 Eskimos with sleds. That was the secret the Belgians had kept. People on Antarctica. It was a greater miracle than the bear. Because even the birds don't go that far south. Everyone knew there was nothing to eat beyond that horizon. Only snow and frost and dark. Van Dyke left the Hollandia for the first time. He spoke some lingo with them nobody understood. The same day, he got me to load the sleds, help the Russian to tackle up the dogs. "We're going on a journey," he said, "and you're coming with us." That's how I became a polar traveler. The picture man came with us. Nobody ever heard him utter a single word, but he made living pictures. We called him the quiet man. Some said he could not hear nor speak, and that was why his eyes could view and steady all things, even the most awful calamities and horrors. Much truth in that. When I stood at hell's gates, it was my ears I covered, never my eyes. He followed us everywhere with that wooden box of his. The silence there can be unbearable. Sometimes the only sound we heard was the picture box rattling. He never knew that sound, nor the balm it was to our ears. But he saw everything about us and looked it up in his pictures. Him and me, the picture man, we looked each other in the eyes only once. That was later. Much later. On the 5th day, we came to a wide plain. Couldn't see anything anymore, just white. Then we saw one tiny dark spot. Seemed to be trembling in the cold. We made straight for it. For days on end, never seemed to come any closer. Finally, we saw what it was. It was a hut built on the last piece of rock without ice on it. We'd started going uphill. I'd not taken notice, but now I was winded every 3 steps. Didn't seem to bother the natives. It was a little tribe. Children and their elders. A few of them had Belgian officers' caps under their fur hats. The Italian called them their scalps. We weren't the first white men they'd seen. That much was sure. I think now they were precious people. Something had ravaged their numbers.
You mean noble?
Precious. We barely saw anything of Van Dyke and the Italian. They were holed up with the natives. They let us do anything we wanted, except there was one thing we were forbidden to come near. It looked like some kind of antlers or the skull of a giant fish. They held it to be holy. We called it their altar. There were times when we stayed in the tent for days on end. The snow hung like a curtain outside, a curtain of snow that can cut open a man's face. Sharp as honed knives. Didn't seem to pain the natives, but when the picture man tried to view the storm with his camera, I had to pull him back into the tent. We rubbed him for hours till the life came back into his body. Winter was at hand. We had to get back before the winter dark. The dark lasts for months on end. No light, just one long night. The Italian was raising Cain, carrying on about the passage. Van Dyke tempered him. Something was wrong. Nobody told me anything. One day came without a breath of wind. The southern lights hung above the horizon. what sailors call the mirror of heaven. The natives fell to screaming and crying out in adoration. Tekelili, tekelili. All of a sudden the Italians showed up. The Eskimos scattered in all directions. Then I heard the Italian shooting. The Russian ran the dogs together. The tent, he cried. Then Van Dyke came running. Leave the tent. His eyes were wild. The eyes of a man that has looked on death. There was blood on his clothes. We left the place with a sled near empty. Hours later, we could still hear the Italian's gun. There's nowhere the concussion of sound travels so far. Nowhere. He shot. Van Dyke's eyes grew dimmer. The ship was still 5 days ahead, but without food, without a fire, without a tent, in that dead, frozen world.
Did all of you escape?
I saw the Italian one more time, frozen.
The Eskimos, what happened to them?
Not now. Van Dyke dared make for the Hollandia only in a straight line. He was scared we'd get lost. It was the surest way, but not the shortest. The dogs jumped and snapped like wild beasts. Brave creatures, in all ignorance of what lay ahead. If only they'd known, hunger and exhaustion would soon rob them of all their courage. All that matters to them is meat. We human beings are the same. Hunger eats our thought. The dogs were the bravest creatures I've ever known. A man can't have a better friend in this world. They saved our bodies. First one we shot was Osman. Every man had to kill and butcher his own dogs. 7 out of the 18, all told. May the Creator forgive us. We've been traveling 9 days. The last was Caruso. He never barked, he whined. That's why we named him after Caruso. Van Dyke's eyes were frozen. His eyes couldn't bear this world any longer. He lay down on one of the sleds. I told you, you can hear farther than you can see there. He said it ever so low. The last words to cross his broken lips were, Caruso. Caruso. There we stood in that empty lowland without a leader. The frost had eaten him. Then we heard Caruso.
The dog was whining, you mean?
No, Caruso was dead. It was the phonograph on the Hollandia playing, not more than 2 miles away. Caruso showed us the way. But maybe it was better to die in the snow. Many sailors had died of a strange disease. They'd eaten the bear. 5 of the Dutchmen had gone to look for us with 7 days' provisions. They were 9 days gone. We must have crossed paths with them. We couldn't wait. Winter wouldn't wait either, as we were to find out soon enough. We paid Van Dyke our last respects there on the ice. I remember Wilson saying, "Please, hurry up. There's no time. Please hurry up. There's no time. There's no time. There's no time. Please hurry up. There's no time. There's no time. Without a skipper, the ship is lost. We weren't at the end of our journey either. Wilson was a good helmsman, but the ice is a dangerous enemy. More dangerous than the dark, more than the devil himself. April is a cruel month. The light shrinks. Everything is just shadows. The ice laughs and smiles, but under her skin she's secretly closing herself, turning into stone, yard for yard. The ice took us. It wasn't Wilson. It was God himself bound us there. We were frozen fast. The last fix we took was 70 south, 85 west. It was the day of the last sun. Then night started. We had enough food on board, but little fresh meat. In good weather, when it wasn't blowing a hurricane, we went out on the ice to hunt. But even the animals had deserted that wasteland. I guarded the dogs, but a body has to sleep, don't you? A body has to sleep. It was good the ship creaked so. The wood was under strain, you see. 3 more sailors were dying. We people have a loud pain. At first light, we brought our supplies ashore, on the ice. The strain was eating the ship, you see. She was outmatched now that the daylight had come back. lost the ship. We lost the ship.
What did you do?
We'd shipped on a forbidden voyage. It was his divine wrath. From then on, Wilson was our leader. Only the strong in spirit survive the dark. We lived on the ice, moved camp sometimes, hunted meat, used the creatures' fat to fire the stoves. Even there, nature is full of mercy. Wilson had a plan. Cape Horn or South Georgia were unthinkable. He wanted to return to the land of the South Pole. He told us that out of all doubt, our only salvation lay with the Eskimos. I was loath to return to that land of the dead, but what could I do? Wilson was our leader. God had ordained it. I knew the dogs, the snow, the sleds. For that, the Lord had chosen me. We decided to return to the Eskimos. To Land's End, if need be, Wilson said. We had to wait for the ice to open, and she opened, and we made the barrier in the sloops. We were no polar travelers. We were doomed to the pole, you understand. We loaded the sleds, tackled up the dogs. Yes, then we were polar travelers. That land is wider than the ocean. Everything froze. Our hands, our feet, our eyes, our bones. Finally, the cold froze our thought. We hardly dared hope to find the natives' camp ever again. How could we? White knows no measuring. A mile isn't a mile. Can't even size up a yard in that light. Not even with a carpenter's eye. When we finally sighted the hut, it was still a day's journey away. Even the pictured man closed his eyes. The Italian was an animal.
You found the Italian?
Yes.
And the Eskimos?
Poor wretches. The Italian ate them.
And the Italian?
Frozen, crucified to the ice. On the ground around the hut, corpses, like the whales in South Georgia. We buried 5 of our own men there. We ate the dogs, and that was that. Wilson saved our minds from madness. He found the tracks.
There were survivors.
Scarcely more than a trace. Ever so small. 2 tracks in the snow. South. To the middle of the earth. We followed them. What else could we do? Wilson kept on about the passage. An opening in the earth. Have faith, he kept crying it out. My head was raging. If I found the courage, I'd have cut off my hands, my feet, my ears, one after the other. Pain everywhere. Senseless pain. Broken tools. Useless. Understand me? The silence there pounds in your head, louder, harder than the coal in your hands. It never stops. Then I saw the vision. When we were 12, I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, you understand?
You mean 12 apostles?
When I counted, there were 12. But when I looked ahead up the white road, there was always another walking beside us. There was always a 13th, and I counted 12. A vision, you understand?
No. Can you explain that?
When there were 4 of us, there was always a 5th. There was always one more than we could count. We were never alone. Never. You don't get a bit of it, do you? What's the sense of it? You don't believe me.
We're very interested in your story.
It's lost on you.
Please, go on. What happened to the Eskimos?
Must I tell this now? All of it?
Did you find the passage?
I don't know. I don't understand. All I see. I'm without words. I've witnessed great miracles. Greater than a mortal being can bear. I'm tired. There was a gorge. A wide gorge. Yes. The wind was warm. We travelled to the end of the earth, and the wind got warm. Even the fog was warm, other than a man had ever gone. The land glowed. It was a hot land, a raging fire.
You followed the trail?
Yes, to the altar. The trail was from the altar, from where they dragged it through the snow, dragged it back.
The Eskimos?
Yes.
Did you ever see the Eskimos again?
What mortal being could ever live there? It was where their dead went. There were still 4 of us. We could have died in peace, in the sight of the Lord. We should never have entered that place. But Wilson pushed ahead. Wilson would not turn back. He was laughing. His face was awful. Smiled like the dead. "Come on," he called out. "I'll save you." It wasn't the Wilson I knew anymore. We climbed and climbed. The ground was red. The heat burned away my lashes, scalded my eyes. I could not see this world any longer. We left it, you understand. We'd gone beyond, the far side. It was a gruesome place. Nothing had the color of life.
Was that the passage?
And it's worse than that. You can cross over into the other side, beyond. You understand? I tried to stop Wilson. I begged him to stay, but he would not be stopped. Light. The light. The light. We had found that reddish-green light talked of by those who travel the polar regions, where the sun rises out of the earth, where the hand of God touches the earth. I let him go. A fine white ash covered me. A great white light took me in. I knew happiness for one moment. I was going towards the eternal light.
But you came back.
Yes. That was my burden. It wasn't my time, you see. The picture man was beside me. Just before he slipped away, he looked me in the eyes. Take the pictures. Take the pictures. We were going towards the eternal light. But I had to bring back the living pictures. They saw it.
Who? Who saw it?
The pictures. The pictures saw it. The light, the white, the color. How could all these things be true if they hadn't? The living pictures saw it all. My eyes will forget, but they never will. Never. Never.
Only after 2 weeks back in London was I able to look at the films made by the picture man. His pictures removed any doubts I still had. Soon afterwards, I returned to Sullivan's cottage. There was still so much to ask, so much remained to be said. But perhaps I mainly wanted to show him that the disbelief in my eyes was gone. It was too late. He had died shortly after my first visit. Nothing remained of his remarkable life, except the moving pictures he had brought back from the wasteland Antarctica.